Pussy boy, most days you wish
Alcohol.
Alcohol
Was one of the things that
Well,
was
I mean,
going on.
What's the point of trying? You don't fit in. They never let
I want to talk to the bullies.
wish it would end.
My lipstick lesbian mother.
You can't breathe. You got a hole in your heart. But love should.
In a relationship.
In a relationship.
Can you run away? How can you live a lie?
I was a thespian, which is different from a lesbian.
Inside, but don't you ever give up because in time it gets better.
Hi there. Welcome to Happy Hour with Cameron Stiehl. I'm Cameron. Today I'm really blessed to have with me a very good friend of probably about almost a decade.
Yes, a long
Mark
time.
Shumway. I gotta say, I'm super excited to have you here because you are
Sweet.
a personal inspiration to me. Let's start with the first order of business. What would you like to drink?
I would love my favorite drink, which is a Bloody Mary.
Then let me get there we go.
Did you hear?
Good. What was
Bloody
it?
Mary, and I'll just have my usual things.
okay.
I just have to tell the story of how we met. But it's pretty funny. We worked together for a long time.
We did.
At
At a boring insurance
a
company.
boring insurance company, but we made it fun.
We did.
It was never boring
Yeah.
there. There was always something going on. And one of the things that was going on was
Alcohol.
Alcohol.
Was one of the things that
Well,
was
I mean,
going
sure,
on.
It
sure,
was.
sure.
So cheers.
Yeah, to you.
We were in HR together, but there was another executive assistant that worked at the company that had an enormous crush on you. Huge crush. She
Sure.
asked me, so what's the deal with the guy that's on your floor that looks like Brad Pitt?
I don't think I know this.
Maybe you don't. And I was like, there's a guy on my floor that
I was
looks
younger
like
then,
Brad
by the way.
Pitt. So I started looking around the floor. I was like, oh, there is a cute guy on the opposite side of my floor. And so she asked me one day, so is he married or gay? Because obviously he's too cute for him to be single. So I had to find out, okay, married or gay. So I asked the other executive assistant on the floor, is Mark married or gay? And she said, used to be married, now gay. And I'm like, okay, there's a story here that I need to find out. So
Right,
then we
right.
ended up going to happy hours together somehow with a lot of
Yeah.
the crew that I think we've lost touch with. So you grew up not too far from here.
I did. I grew up in Sacramento. So
Okay.
I was actually from Utah, but I moved to Sacramento
right.
when I was 4. So I definitely consider myself a California boy.
Okay.
And my family's still all up in Sacramento as well.
So you don't really remember too much about Utah.
I don't. I actually spent my summers in Utah growing up, even after we had come to California. So I have huge memories of Utah and my father and that whole side of my family. But I have no memory of living there full time.
Okay.
At all.
Now when you say
Thank,
the word,
thank goodness.
well, when you think Utah, some of us
Mormon.
think oppressive and some of us think Mormon. So
Yeah.
Mormon family?
I'm from a huge Mormon family. I was born to a Mormon housewife, which if you knew my mother, immediately you would sort of scoff at because she's so not that. And my father, and there were 3 of us, and my mother did all her housewife duties and stayed home and cooked and cleaned. And she did all that for as long as she could. When I was 4 and my older sister I think was 6 and my younger brother was like 2, she left my father and took the 3 of us and we drove to California. In many ways, we all kind of grew up together in Sacramento, and she essentially taught me everything I am today. She's awesome, and she's lesbian actually, and I call her my lipstick lesbian mother.
Did she leave because of wanting to leave the Mormon church or wanting to leave Utah, wanting to leave dad, all the above?
You know,
What happened there?
no, she didn't want to leave the church. I know that, and she definitely had not ever experienced an attraction towards a woman. She left because the way she describes it is, if she stayed in that house another moment longer, she would have, physically died. My father was not a communicator, and my father was not expressive in terms of really anything other than sports. And she loves to talk about the world and solve all the world's problems, and she was just extremely unhappy. So she left him, she came to California. She actually had a second marriage that she was in for a very brief amount of time. When I came out of the closet at 15, again, my mother was my heterosexual mother, and when I was 16, she met a woman and she fell in love. You would think that someone who is gay would be really open and accepting of it, which I ultimately was, but it was definitely a transition that was very, very difficult for me.
So when you came out to your mother, was that easy? Was that difficult?
At 15, I came out. It was sort of a random moment. I was a theater geek, shocking, right? I was a thespian. which is different from a lesbian.
But not always. I was-
Sometimes they can coexist. I was going to opening night, and I don't remember. I don't really actually know why I felt compelled on this particular night, but I sat my mom down and burst into tears and told her I thought I was gay. She held me and told me she loved me no matter what. I went to the school, and flowers were delivered from her backstage telling me how much she loved me, which meant everything to me, and I'll never forget that feeling. And I became a new person. I've never looked back ever since. And actually was able to leverage most of the teachings that she had given us throughout our lives in terms of loving yourself and embracing who you are.
And now you are able to pass those teachings along to your own daughter.
My daughter, if she would only
Madison.
listen to me, actually.
She's a teenager. She'll
Yes.
listen. I mean, she is listening, but anyway, how old is your daughter?
I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she's really amazing, and she's really argumentative. And
I wonder where she gets that
And I don't know where. She's very opinionated, very unlike her father. I met her mother back in probably the early 90s, and we had decided that we would have children together, and it took us 3 very, very grueling, very long years to get pregnant. In fact, the time that we got pregnant was really going to be probably one of the last times that we had done it.
You seem to be very confident with who you are now, and it sounds like a lot of that came from your mom, but was there ever a time where you felt very hopeless or depressed?
Going back to before I came out of the closet, I remember, yeah, kids were really mean, actually. I think kids are still really mean in junior high. I remember being, pushed down in the locker room more than once. And it was one of those situations where, you can't really fight because you'd get beat up, and you can't really burst into tears, even though that's all you want to do. So you get up and you walk to your locker and everybody's laughing, and that's pretty horrible. I was thrown in a dumpster once, which was also in junior high. Sort of a bad
Junior high
time.
sucks.
Junior high sucks.
I
Those
gotta
kids are
say,
mean.
They are mean. Why does that have to be that way? I mean, everybody seems to have the worst stories. I want to talk to
Yeah.
the bullies maybe and see, does anybody
Well,
feel like they were on top of that?
I want to talk to the bullies. That's actually a good call out. And that's the time that you most want to, begin to feel like you fit in. But for the most part, no, I'm pretty positive in my outlook. I call that self-preservation, just because it feels a lot better. I'm just coming through a time where I haven't worked for a couple years, and I had a hard time finding a job up until just a couple months ago. And that last year, yeah, there were a few days I could barely move from the couch.
You made it to the couch.
I
couldn't get out of
I
bed.
made it to, and I made the TV on. But no, for the most part, I'm actually really, really hopeful.
So you just got a new job.
I work for Macy's.com, which is Macy's online version. It is completely different from anything I've ever done in my life. Be careful what you wish for, I think, is the moral to that story.
You wanted something different after we left.
I did.
Your passion was not necessarily to go into
Macy's.com.
Macy's.com. I know
It
you
was
have
not at all.
another passion that has more to do with what you kind of wanted to do, which has to do with animals.
I've done a ton of volunteer work in animal rescue organizations where we're trying to find homes for dogs. Early on in my volunteerism, I did a lot of cat-related stuff, but I find that I work more with dogs now. But honestly, in terms of, the whole idea of giving back to our community and what you're able to receive in return, my life is completely fulfilled by what I do with these dogs and these cats.
So the activism, you're doing your thing, you're working. Do you have a message you'd like to get out to the world at large, the straight community, back to Utah?
Yeah.
Something you'd like to say?
To the straight world, I would just say we are your brothers and your sisters. You've probably heard that from other people. We are your aunts and your uncles and your cousins, and we are not going anywhere. And I am, my optimism sort of guides me to really believe in the goodness that is within every human being, which sounds trite, but I genuinely feel that way. And I would encourage everyone to tap into that part of themselves. The up-and-coming gay community, was that part of your question?
Yeah, honestly, it is, because there's so many kids that are still, like we went through, getting beat up in locker rooms or put in dumpsters or having to struggle with coming out or just who they are and feeling different. What do you want to say to those kids?
You know what? I have 2 messages. The first one is to use the slogan from the campaign that I think we're all aware of, which is "It gets better." Surround yourself, find those people in your community that are accepting towards you. Experience self-love, reaffirming messages to yourself that you are important and you are a valuable member of our society. The second part of that, which is sort of maybe out of context, but it's important to me, is I see so many of these young kids that don't treat each other well, and they're catty and they're mean and they make fun of people, and I think that they feel often that they're supposed to be that way. I would encourage them to not be like that, and kind of back to my earlier message. It's okay to be different and sort of stand up for our obligation to be loving and compassionate towards each other, and I would want to encourage them to manifest that for themselves as well.
Finding a support system in our community at any age is important. Sometimes in a group, there can be a little bitchy, catty competition thing happening where we don't necessarily treat each other all that well.
Right.
And we have talked about this before, but give me your opinion on that.
I don't have patience for it anymore, and particularly the older I get. And so I agree with you. It's not even that they don't treat each other very well, although they can get sort of catty with each other, but it's the way they talk about other people that they don't even know. I feel like we have the responsibility to either tell those individuals that it's not okay to talk about people that way, and I have done that, and I've had people who I know don't particularly care for me to this day because of that, or I remove myself from the situation. And as you and I have talked about, you get a lot of those people one-on-one, and they're super sweet, and they're super loving, and they're super compassionate. I don't know what it is about that group energy that perpetuates that cattiness and that bitchiness, and life's too short.
You are engaged.
I am.
Yes. Your fiance is
Crazy.
a beautiful man who you
He's
didn't
a
even
sweet man.
admit to being your boyfriend for
He's
the
a s-
first year. Talk to me about Tristan.
I have an ex-husband that I was in a long-term relationship with. And I call him my ex-husband, but we weren't technically married, but we were together for 11 years. After that relationship ended, which was extremely painful, I was single and I dated several people for a long time. I met Tristan, and I was only 40 at the time, and he was 24. And so, of course, I'm like, what would we have in common? And he was really aggressive. He pursued me, which I only say because I'm so grateful that he did. And we were together, and for the first year, I didn't want to subscribe to those rules about, I think I've shared with you, you see these people that spend 5 minutes together and then all of a sudden on Facebook,
in a
they're
relationship.
in a relationship. I didn't want to be that guy. Fast forward 5 years later, he proposed to me on my 45th birthday. I was completely stunned. And the only reason he did that is because he was tired of waiting for me to propose to him. And we're going to get married next year, which is interesting because I went from never wanting to get married to super excited about it.
Well, thank you for being here, and cheers to you, and Tristan, and Madison.
And our children.
And our
Yeah,
children.
for sure. Yeah, thanks.
And here's to you. Thank you for being here for another episode of Happy Hour with Cameron Stiehl.